Hi guys, I'm happy to see that you have joined us today for this amazing session. I am Rida Malik, a beta Microsoft student partner, and we'll be starting in about 5 minutes so that people can join in and everything is set. So I thank you for your patience and looking forward to a great session. Hey guys, we have Sway with us now, and we'll be starting off the session. For a small introduction, I just want to say that today we have with us a beta Microsoft student partner, Sayyid Sohebuddin. He's the president of the student body MSS at college and an inspiration for all of his juniors, for all of his dedication and determination towards learning and working. I personally have learned immensely from him. And thank you so much, Suhail, for joining us today. And I know that this is going to be a very informative session where all of us are going to learn a lot. So, over to you.
Yeah, hello everyone. Am I fairly audible? If
Yeah.
Rida could. Okay, done. So thank you very much, Rida, for that introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. So I must say we must have just spotted a huge, a drawback in the Teams application. So I don't know why this happens. Anyway, technical things keep on happening. Let's move ahead. So you must have been knowing about what the topic is. So we are going to be talking about something very interesting and something very new, which is one second. Yeah, I'm still audible. Okay, let me share my screen one second. If someone could acknowledge if my screen is visible right now with the presentation.
Yeah, you are audible, and I've sent this your desktop screen live, so you can continue.
Okay, done. So here we are with the introduction to containers and Kubernetes. So before I start, firstly, I would like to welcome you on a formal note, a casual note, anything. And then next, I'll tell you a few things about myself. So Rida has already said that I'm a president of MSS MJCT and a beta MSP as well. I like working with MLAI, web development, and particularly with Azure Cloud Services. I love learning and exploring and building projects. I write tech blogs as well. I have interest in research, and I watch football as a hobby. So you must see. a team on the bottom right corner. So that's my favorites. I'm a Real Madrid fan. So what's this session about? This session is all about application deployment strategies. So we usually work on creating applications, but little do we know that deployment is as equally vital and as equally complex as creating an application is. So this session would give you an insight of how things actually work according to the current standards. So nothing that we are going to talk about is retro, and it is actually being implemented everywhere in the industry now. So what are we doing today? We'll be deploying an application as a container and then orchestrate it on a Kubernetes cluster. It may sound a lot, it may sound fancy right now, but we'll break it down into pieces and it will be very easy coming at you. So do not worry looking at those fancy terms right now. So what will we be learning today? So firstly, why microservices architecture? So before I say why microservices architecture, let me tell you in a small paragraph, why do we have microservice architecture? So we had applications developed as an entire pack, a bundle. So we deploy the entire thing. If something goes wrong, the entire thing is down. So the drawback with this was if a small feature XYZ, which was not as relevant, is malfunctioning, the entire application goes down. So we found the need to break the system down into something which is more relevant and logical. So with that, we came to the microservices architecture and what is containerization, its applications, how to spin containers and how to orchestrate containers. And if you talk about the keywords, the terminologies, or the major things that you'll be going across today are how to use a Docker, how to write a Docker file, how to use registries, how to work with Azure Container Instances, ACI, how to create a cluster with AK. So basically, we'll be focusing on Azure. We'll be learning everything in light of Azure. How to write .eml files for clusters. So writing files for clusters is very vital, and that is something which is not anticipated a lot. So we'll also be writing files for clusters and creating them manually, and we'll also be using Azure Cloud Shell, CLI for all the things that we're going to be doing today. So moving ahead, what is the relevance of today's session? So firstly, why have we chosen containers and Kubernetes as a topic for today's session? Firstly, it's industry standard deployment. It's under the current trends, it's something which is very useful and valuable. And secondly, if you see, it's a $4.3 billion market. The project market for application container technologies is somewhere around 4.3 billion, which is enormous, which is huge. 87% industry adoption rate we see in container deployment today, and 65% IT organizations are using Kubernetes tools on their teams. So these are some statistics to show you relevance of why containers and Kubernetes are important in the first place. Now, what will be the plan? How will we do all of this and how will we cruise along? Now, firstly, we'll cover up the fundamentals and which are very vital and important. And remember, knowing the concepts is very, 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 very important. This is a not so easy subject otherwise. Only if you do not listen and concentrate here, when you try to implement these things, it will be heck a lot of trouble for you. Once done, we'll get to code, no problem there. But please follow along with the theory and follow along with the concepts, which is very important. So let's begin with the session and let's start cutting down these things into smaller bits and let's see what each one of us is, each one of it is. So firstly, what is deployment? Hosting your application on a server for access is basically deployment. Now there are many ways in which this can be done. You can host in n number of ways. We'll talk about specifically hosting on a server. Server I'm mentioning exclusively because there are serverless architectures as well. we wouldn't be discussing about them, but we'll talk in light of server. Okay, so that was deployment. So when I've said server, so let us review what a server actually is before we get into talking more about it. So server is basically a hardware with an operating system and various applications running on the operating system or managed by the OS. Deployment scenario. So as you could see on the right, this is very much analogous and is actually our own personal computer. So servers in small organizations like our colleges and small offices have a simple computer setup which they may refer to or call as a server and then host their applications on it. It's totally fine if it's fairly simple and there are no complexities and the applications are not large enough and there are not many users. It's fine in that scenario. So this is a typical server and this is how a server would look like. Now when we move to the new modern times or the next thing which is in the line when it comes to training. So what is a virtual machine? Virtual machine is very much similar to a server. It's very analogous. We have hardware, we have software running over a hardware, and then let me go back. We have applications running. But if you could see here on my slide, virtual machine architecture is a bit different from that of a traditional server. You see infrastructure, same as before, and then you see a layer called hypervisor. So what hypervisor does is it loosens the coupling between the hardware and the software. So any OS can run on any hardware. That is what the hypervisor does. It virtualizes the infrastructure of the hardware. So you have a Linux running on a hard disk and an AMD Radeon GPU, no problem. The same instant you could just move the hypervisor and have a Windows OS running. You can have a Mac OS running, any operating system matching up and running with any hardware. That is that is what a virtual machine does. And then the next unique thing about this is you could notice that there are small boxes in which you have something called a guest operating system and an application inside those boxes. So those are multiple virtual machines being able to run on the same architecture and the same infrastructure. So what we see here is on a server you have hardware and you have a single operating system and you have your applications hosted on it. But here you have an infrastructure hardware, you have multiple operating systems running on the same hypervisor and different applications on different operating systems. So this is how traditional data center works. I've kept an analogous image of a data center in real time, and this is how virtual machines are maintained and managed. And many data centers have virtual machines in them. They do not have typical servers, even though we call them as servers, but they're actually virtual machines. Now we'll move ahead and see what is a microservice architecture. Service architecture, every module of an application is made mutually and it creates a lack of dependency between various modules. Lack of dependency in the sense no module is dependent on in a while. Uh, I hope the network is fine. Is there any lag in?
Yeah, it's breaking a little bit.
Okay, okay. Okay. 20 seconds का वीडियो का भी क्या डिले इसका डिले बस सही है पूरा perfect. Okay, 1 second. I'll switch my network maybe. I hope there won't be any delay now. Okay, good.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Perfect. Okay. Good. Okay, talking about a microservice architecture, and so basically we try to divide applications into small number of logical modules, and if each of them are independent of one another. So if one of the modules go down, other modules are not affected at all. So everything works seamlessly. So now let us see how this is actually happening. You could see there's a diagram on your screen, and on this diagram you have various services and database and various APIs, and all of them connected and integrated to each other. Now assume that a service, example, the account service goes down. So if the account service goes down, you can have access to a shipping service. There's no problem in having an access to a service if the service goes down. If a parallel service goes down, provided the architecture is a microservice architecture. So if a service goes down, another one works seamlessly. If you try to access the service which is currently down, then you may have an issue, but that's totally fine as long as the entire application is up and running. So that only affects a part of the usage or a part of the users who are trying to access a service which is down. So this is how microservice architecture breaks everything down and keeps everything independent. As a software engineer, your role would be to write code which is not dependent on any other module. Example, you may fancy writing login and sign up code which is very different and not dependent on anything that is related to things which are inside the application. So you have to be very independent, and you should be able to test it independently as well. So now how to implement the microservice architecture? Now entire application, as we know, is deployed as a concrete unit. There's no way to slice it into logical pieces given the current server and the virtual machine standard. So how do we do this? It's possible in virtual machines, but for that you need to have various virtual machines up and running, which is very cost ineffective. So this poses a very big challenge and a very big threat to the organization and maintaining the server and keeping the application up and running at all times. So now here we have containers. Containers come to the rescue at this place. So what do containers do? They help you divide your application and keep it into various logical and keep it into independent logical bits which work together seamlessly. So container is a standard unit of software that packages up code and all its dependencies so the application runs quickly and reliably from one computing environment to other. So this is a container, and the differences between a modern virtual machine and a container by the terms of architecture is that the first thing you could notice is there's a hypervisor missing. There's no hypervisor in a containerized application, and there's a hypervisor in the modern virtual machine. And why do we need a hypervisor? Because we have to virtualize the hardware. When it comes to containers, we do not have to virtualize the hardware. We have to virtualize the software or the operating system. When I speak in simple terms, virtual machines require various operating systems to run on the same hardware. So there can be Linux, Windows, and a Mac running parallelly on the same hardware. Whereas in a container, you have an operating system and you have various applications whose requirements are totally different running on the same operating system. So this is the difference between a virtual machine and a container. There's a hypervisor missing in a container because we do not have to actually virtualize the hardware. We need to virtualize the operating system. So virtual machine is from the previous slides as it is. I've tried to keep the same diagram so that you can relate. If you look at a container, there are A, B, C, D, E, F, and there are a lot of applications running on the same operating system. The thing with that you notice fairly new in these diagrams is something called a Docker. So for now, you can understand that Docker is something similar to hypervisor, but virtualizes operating system. Hypervisor virtualizes your infrastructure such that there are multiple operating systems running on the same infrastructure. Whereas a Docker virtualizes the OS. Example, there are multiple applications which with different operating system requirements running on the same OS. Docker kind of converts the operating system requirements and matches to that which is on the infrastructure. So you can have a Mac OS application and a Linux application, a Windows application, a Zorin application running parallelly on the same Windows OS, provided you have a Docker. All right, so the basic understanding of a container is that it's it is it's a kind of logical framework in which you can put smaller pieces of your application and all of them run independently. They're however connected, but they run independently. If one of them goes down, other parts of your application are not affected and they stay up and running. The server time doesn't go down. They're not experiencing any kind of downtime or idle time. So how do you understand this? Well, I've tried making a very simple to understand analogy which you can relate and try to understand what containers are and what they actually do. So let us imagine that you are a mechanic with a determined project in hand. For now, forget containers, forget everything, just forget servers, forget that you are a software engineer and get into this analogy. You are a mechanic, a simple car mechanic or an automobile mechanic with a determined project in hand. And what is your project? Well, you are very ambitious and you're trying to create a flying car, cars that actually fly. So you're trying to create a revolutionary a breakthrough in the automobile industry and trying to create a flying car. And then what happens next? So in order to create this car, you need help from your friend, and that friend is living somewhere far off. So the only way that you can get his help is that you actually ship this thing over there or you get him here. So basically he cannot travel and he cannot get here. So you have to ship this thing to him. That is the only way that you can get him involved in the project. The only caveat here is that your friend has a fairly smaller workshop than you. So you have a huge workshop, but your friend has a very small workshop wherein he cannot accommodate any of the prototypes or any of the tools or machineries required to start working with you, but he's equally talented and you need his expertise on this project. So what you do is you go to a dock. I mean, you go to a shipping agency or a dock, and then you take your prototype. So basically, something that is in a smaller and a relatively working state. You take your prototype. You take the tools that you require to build the prototype. It can be a toolbox in this case. You take your prototype, you take your tools, and then you package it together and put it in a container. So assume that a container is a cargo container in this case. So your prototype is in and your tools are in this container as well. So next, what you're required to do, so you are required to take a ticket for to be able to transport this thing entirely to your friend who's living in a remote place. So you take a ticket for your cargo and for shipping it. You do all the formalities and then you go to the head office. So that is the procedure. Once you have packaged your container, you take the ticket, you go to the head office, you deposit the ticket there so that your person on the other side of the country can access the local branch and then show the container, show the ticket and gain access rights and be able to access your cargo. So you go to the nearby cargo office and you post the ticket and then the ship goes off. Now when the ship is going off, it reaches the destination, the city or the town wherein your friend is living. So now what your friend is required to do, he's required to go back to the branch office, the local office, whichever may be in the town. He's required to show a copy of the ticket that you have sent him. And then once he shows the ticket, he's now able to gain access to the cargo that you have sent. Now he goes to the container and he is now able to open it and access it. And what he does is he takes the container to a nearby workshop. Workshop in the sense, a workshop which is on the seaport, on the docks. So remember that he has a very small workshop and he cannot build on this project or the prototype that we have sent in his workshop. So he tries to find a huge garage on the port, on the seaport, on the dock itself, and he starts working with it. So he opens everything, he takes the toolbox out of the container, he takes the prototype off, and he starts to working. So, well, this is kind of how you try to solve your problem as a mechanic living in a small town with a huge project in hand, and you have your friend who's equally capable living on other side of the country. You take your tools and you take your tools and your prototype, you package it in a container, ship it to him, and then he accesses it. Instead of taking it to his own workshop, he kinds of opens the thing on the port itself, and since you have sent the tools along, he starts working on it. So yeah, this was great teamwork done, and this is pretty in a pretty nice way of a good job done. So now, what am I trying to tell through this? Why have I included this example in the first place? So let's try to decode. So before I decode, if someone could acknowledge if my audio and video are clear, so there's no lag. I sense there might be a lag here. Rida, could you acknowledge?
Yeah, your audio and video will be in sync. There will be a lag for the attendees, but both of them are in sync, so you can go ahead.
Great. Okay, I'll continue. So let's decode the analogy. So I hope all of you are into the analogy. So I'll give you a review. You had your project and which is a car. So basically, you have tried shipping your car with the toolbox required over to your friend who's living in a remote town in the same country. So you go and take a ticket. You go to the office. You try to publish the ticket, and then the ship goes. It uh, reaches the destination dock, and then your friend goes back to their local office. He takes the ticket. He goes to the container. He's able to access it since he has the ticket. He takes it to a workshop in the dock itself. He doesn't take it to his own workshop because it's too tiny and too small. So now let's start to decode and relate this with technical analogy, with technical terms. So this right here, or your project, was your computer or your workstation. Your application, or the project which you had in our case, is your application. The very ambitious project of creating a flying car in our analogy is your application. The tiny little workshop of your friend is your teammate's computer, is your teammate's device, who's working on the same team. So it's your teammate's computer. It's with a different configuration. If you notice, it's having a different amount of space, it's having a different amount of configuration, and it's in a different kind of setup. But he still wishes to work on the same project as you are, even though he's working on a very different environment with a different OS, a different setup, different libraries altogether. The seaport is the Docker. So the dock is actually a Docker. Docker is something which is very important here, and from now on, you should be able to relate it to some technical terms as well. So the prototype and the toolbox you sent are the application prototype and the dependencies of your application that you're trying to ship over to your friend. The container is actually a software container. The container, the ticket that you took for shipping your container is a container image. And the regional office to which you had to go and register your ticket so that your friend could access it is a container registry. Now the dock where the workshop in the dock or in the seaport where your friend could actually take the container and start working, and the ship as well with the task of transporting the entire thing, is the Docker engine. So we have a Docker engine, we have a container registry, we have a container, we have a container image. So let's try to put all those things together. The analogy is pretty clean to imported terms used in containerization. The new car is your application, the tools and equipment are your setup and dependencies, your workshop is your computer, the cargo is your entire environment. Your friend's workshop is his computer with a completely different configuration. The dock is a Docker. The shipping container is a software container. The ticket is a container image. The office or the headquarter of the cargo office is a container registry, and the docks workshop is the Docker engine. So you have all these fancy terms together, and let's see what all of them is. So what are containers? They're a standard unit of software that package up code and where every application works independently and reliably to the environment. This is pretty useful wherein you are trying to work on the same project without having the dependencies or the environment set up altogether. So imagine that I have to work on a project that my friend is trying to work on, and he's having a huge Python setup with all the heavy libraries, and he's working on an ML model, and he has all those libraries set up. He has the notebook set up. He has installed. He has created a virtual environment. He's put in a lot of libraries. He's running it on his GPU. He's doing all those kind of things. On the other hand, I have 2 GB RAM on my laptop. I do not have a GPU at all. I do not have any of the setups done. I only have Python. I do not have any ML libraries. I do not have a Jupyter notebook setup installed. Still, I want to work on the same project as he's working on. So here is where container helps. I can typically he can package it into a container, and I can access it through a container registry. I can pull it off. I can install Docker on my laptop or my machine, and then I can instantly have the application up and running. I do not need to install any of the things because they are already shipped along with the container, and the container runs on an operating system by virtualization. So I do not have to install, and I can work it. It's like basically he's shipping his entire environment into a container. I work on the container, not on my machine, and then that way the work is done. So let's talk about Docker. So Docker is a service. It was launched as a service. So if you type Docker, you don't see Docker. You see Docker as a technology. You don't see Docker as an organization as a whole. But bluntly speaking, Docker can be referred to as an organization or a technology available, a platform as a whole. It's like GitHub. GitHub is a technology platform available. It's NPM. Docker is something similar. So Docker is a ready-to-use service that delivers containers, and it was created in 2013. It was created a while before 2013, but it was declared an open standard into 2013. So uh, Microsoft gives the service of using Docker as Docker Windows containers. So they have a different version of themselves in partnership with Docker. They have Docker Windows containers. So there are multiple services dealing with container architecture, and the most common one is Docker. So Docker is one of the technologies out there which allows you or gives you access to creating containers seamlessly. So now container image. When an application is containerized, we generate a container image. Example, I have my application, a web app, wherein I'm trying to create a container image, wherein I'm trying to containerize it. So when I write a file which instructs the computer that this is going to be deployed on a container, when I execute that file, the thing that is generated is not a container, it's a container image. So container image is very lightweight, and on runtime it is converted into a container. So this is like a kind of declaration. If you relate it with object-oriented programming, this is like a class which is not assigned any memory or anything. But when it comes into runtime and you have an object declared, this becomes available and you have memory allocated to it. So speaking in terms of OOP, object-oriented programming, that is how it would happen. So container images become containers in runtime. So you have container images set up, and you can pull an image and convert it into a container at runtime. When the container is not up and running, it's a container image. So container image convert into container into runtime. So now I have talked of a file which you write in order to convert your container into in order to convert your application into a container. You have to write a file. That file specifies what your container image would look like. That file is called a Docker file. So the unique thing which I find about Docker files is they do not have any extension. Example, a HTML file is like index.html, a CSS file is stylesheet.css, a JS JavaScript file is index.js. For C, we have CPP. For Python, we have .py. For Docker file, we have no extension. It's just a Docker file. So a Docker file includes all the instructions to create a Docker container and run it. It will also create your Docker image. So you write a Docker file, you automatically have a Docker image created, and then you can run your Docker image and spin it into a container. So spin is the term use with containers. So when you say VM, you say I fire up a VM, and when you say containers, you say I spin a container. So spinning containers is very easy when you write a Docker file, and Docker file is a way Docker allows you to create containers from container images. And then you have container registries. A container registry is basically a repository where the container images are stored. It can be public or private. In your case, if you're trying to work on a project, a container registry as a whole can be thought of as the local head office or the cargo agency service where you went and registered your ticket with whom you registered your ticket. So in terms of your project, if you have a huge machine learning model or setup running on your computer and you want your friend to work on it, you can write a Docker file, create a Docker image out of it, create a container image out of it, push it to a repository. Example, something like a GitHub repository. But remember, in this case, we are talking of container images. GitHub repository is for pushing and collaborating on any applications, any software code. So I'm using it as an analogy. You can push it onto a repository, and your friend could access that repository, pull the container image, and spin that image into container at runtime. So that is how container images work with container registries. So there can be multiple registries available. You have Docker Hub, and we have Azure Container Registries. So you can package your application into a container image and pull it or push it into one of the container registries, which can either be a Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry. So coming next, what is a Docker engine and how can someone literally pull out a Docker image and their OS is not compatible, their hardware is not sufficient enough? How does it happen that they can run an application which is requiring totally different configurations? It's kind of magical. So Docker engine is what allows that to happen. So Docker engine is basically a server client and a REST API. So this is what a Docker engine looks like in a Docker architecture. On the right, you have a registries, a Docker Hub or the Azure Container Registries, which provide a platform wherein you can pull container images from, and then you have a host. Now this is very interesting here. The host is your own computer or your own device where you're trying to run a container. In your case, if you're trying to collaborate on a project with your friend, this can be your friend's device. So what happens on your friend's devices? There's something called a Docker daemon created. So now Docker daemon virtualizes hardware, virtualizes software from the application. Your friend might be having a Mac OS operating system, and your application is meant for Windows. So what Docker daemon does is it understands this difference, and it understands the drawback that can be in this case, and it adjusts itself such that you can run a Windows application seamlessly on a Mac OS, and then Docker daemon would take the responsibility of every intermediate processing required. So you have your container image and you have a container running on a Docker daemon on your on a host computer. So your friend could easily run your container. He could pull an image from the container registry. He could spin it into a container in runtime, and the Docker daemon would help him run and put the thing live. And you can communicate with the Docker daemon using a client. So it can be a CLI where you can communicate with the daemon. So daemon is there on your device. When I show you the demo, you will realize it. It's there running on your computer. So you have to communicate it through the CLI. So we'll see how that happens and how we can communicate with the Docker daemon. I'll be relating to all of this when I move ahead and I show you how these things actually work and how it actually puts up together and how this can happen. So we have the Docker engine, we have the container registries, you have the containers, and then you have the Docker and the Docker engine, all of it working together. So let's see how that happens. Now, while I share my screen and while I code, you can follow along, and I'll share all the files that I'm using so that you can code later, following up with there might be a small lag, or I may tend to move along quickly. So you may concentrate on trying to follow this thing, and I'll share the entire project, and I've also written an end-to-end project guide in the form of a blog. I have 2 blogs written covering the entire thing, containers and Kubernetes separately. So you do not have to worry about missing out on anything. Okay. So yeah, let's start with this. So hold on while I try to share my screen with the editor on. Okay, yeah, here we are. I hope you can see my desktop and my screen is clear. So yeah, what we'll be doing is, first I'll show you what application do we have today, and what are we gonna be doing. So this is my editor. I'll be using VS Code, and I'll be showing you a small application. And first let's visit and let's skim through what the application is before we get into the fancy terms, before we make a container image out of it, or before we deploy it as a container. So what I'll do is I'll write node server.js. So basically this is a web application which is running on Express, and the runtime environment used is Node. So those who have idea working with Node and Express might feel very comfortable. For those who don't, no problem. There is nowhere that the application is related to the procedure that we containerize it, except in a very limited manner. So you can containerize any application you want. For this, I got this beautiful application which was in Express and Node. So I used this. You can try using containers with slight changes on any application you want. So let me run this and show you what is actually happening here. Yeah. So this is my application. This is a kind of bullet board management. So it's wherein you add events and they are reflected on your screen as well. So you can create an event. Example, first let me delete this event. So okay, I'm able to delete it, and let's create an event like we have containers and AKS, and we'll keep today's date and this will submit. So you see this is a kind of calendar kind of management thing which I found on the internet. I'll acknowledge that I haven't done this thing. This was available as a sample application on the Docker docs itself, so I've only forked it, and for demonstration purposes I found it to be very elegant and very cool. So this is the application as a whole. So now it's running fine. You have seen that I was able to add an event. I'll delete an event, and there the event vanishes. It's working very brilliantly. So if you see here, I've served this application locally. So this was my application running locally. One second, let me. Okay. To be very clear, it was on port number 8080. So this is here. Here it prompts that we have magic happening on port 8080. So here we have the application running actively on port 8080. So Do not confuse. Yeah, I'll do this. Okay, so you have localhost 8080, port number 8080 on your localhost serving the application. What I'll do is I'll now stop this and I'll move back and let's see what happens here. Now, if I try to reload this, this would crash because I'm not serving the application right now. So this is the application working perfectly. Now, for me to be able to create a container out of it, the first thing, my application is working perfectly. I have to check it properly because I do not want to have issues with my container. So this is my application which is running fine. I was able to do kind of things. I was able to host it on my local host, which was port number 8080 for this application. If you move to server.js, let me minimize this. If you move to server.js, you could see that the part that I've highlighted, we are listening on port 8080. So that is why in the first place we have output on port number 8080. It's anything you can keep you want. There is no restriction provided the port is available. You could write netstat and see the list of ports available. So I won't go into that. Next, let's try to create a Docker image, a container image for this. So what we are required to do is you're required to create a Docker file. So you write Docker file and you see instantly this beautiful Docker logo coming over there. So now I have to write a Docker file. So how to write a Docker file? Well, this is typically like something which is in an assembly language. So these are very simple lines of code. They are hardly, I think, 5 to 8 lines which you have to write very carefully, and then you can have your application running. So firstly, I have to acknowledge that this is an Express and Node application. So I'll write from and I'll write Node because I have to build this application on a Node environment. So I have to tell the application that when you make a container image, make sure that it's running Node.js properly. So Node. After Node, now there can be, the prompt suggests me that you must be having a from base image. So what happens is containers are actually used very widely. So I do not want to always keep configuring my environment. So what happens is people who use Node, they have created a base image called Node. So whenever you use this base image, the name of the image that people have made available onto Docker, so that when you try to import that image, you have all the basic configurations for that language or that framework that you're trying to use. I'm trying to use Node. From Node specifies I'm trying to use Node. Now after the colon, I'll write current slim. So this is a container image that I'm trying to use as my base image. So this is an available version of a container image that I'm trying to build my application upon, which is a Node.js image. So from Node colon current hyphen slim. So current hyphen slim is something that was compatible with this application. You can use any version of or any image version of the framework that you are using, no problem. Now next we have to create a working directory, work dir. Before moving forward, I would like to make it very clear that the Docker file is instructing the computer system or the Docker daemon to run this application in this manner. So firstly, it's saying that it's a Node.js application. Now create a working directory. I'll create like /user/source/app. So on your desktop, you create a new folder. In the same way on the Docker daemon, I'm trying to create a directory where I'm trying to put my project. Now, what should this directory contain? It's an empty directory as of now. So I'll write copy. And for any Node.js application, package.json contains all the required information that the application is that the application is working on. So I've package.json, and I should be putting a dot here. So that's the syntax: copy space whatever files that you're trying to put in the directory initially with a dot followed by a dot. So copy package.json dot. If I don't have a dot, you see I had an error earlier. So you must have it. And then next, now the package.json file is in. What next? Now you should try to run the first and the initial command that is present. So we should be running npm install. So when you write npm install run, run, yeah, run npm install. So what npm install does is you have, you see on the directory structure on my left, you have package.json file. Now package.json file contains the name of the application, the version, the description, the dependencies, and everything. So it basically tries to put all the dependencies. So see, if you see, it's very dynamic. The Docker file tells all the dependencies beforehand. You do not have to take the headache of telling the dependencies if you're trying to ship this application. So run npm install and all the dependencies are installed. And then on what port of the container, on what port of the application running the container, you're trying to expose it on. So expose 8080. So why I'm doing this is when this runs on a machine, it basically tries to listen on port number 8080 or port number 8080. As you see, you have in server.js app.listen on 8080. So when it's trying to listen on 8080, it's very much logical to expose the port 8080. Expose is export followed by the port number would be the only port number which would be accessible remotely, which would be accessible from outside of the container. So it's pretty obvious that I have to expose port number 8080. And following expose, I'll write my command. So command specifies what would you like to actually enter into the command line so that your application starts running. So the command we have is npm start. So writing npm start would serve this application. You could also write node space server.js, no issues, because I used it earlier. I'll use this now. And then you have in your directory, you have, firstly, I'll skim through again. You have used a container image so that the container knows that you have node application running, and then you created a working directory. You copied the package.json file, you are installing all the dependencies, and you're exposing on port 88, and then you're trying to write npm install. Where is the code? You need the entire code. So you have to copy it as well, right? So I'll copy the entire code. So the entire code which is on the left, the package file, server.js, CSS, HTML, everything is now into the container. We'll save this. So that's it. The Docker file is created. Once the Docker file is created, now we will wish to convert this Docker file into a Docker image. So there are a set of commands that you have to run. So I'll maximize this so that you can, I'll try so that you can see it pretty clearly. So what are those commands? So basically, Docker CLI provides you an interface wherein you can write those commands. So there are the commands with which you can firstly create an image. Secondly, you can run an image and spin it into a container, and you can see the number of images. You could see the number of containers. You could see the running containers. You could get all kinds of information you want to. So let me start by first showing you how to see the Docker, how to see the running Docker processes or the running Docker containers. So I'll write Docker space PS. When I write this, I get two containers running. So you see there is one called container with the image called aks-app and a container with the image called get image. So I already have two okay, I'll make this clear. Yeah. So I already have two containers running on my machine, on my computer. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to now see what Docker images do I have. So I'll write Docker images. So on entering this, there are a lot of images because I've tried to create a lot of applications using containers. So I have all of this. So when you do this on the first time, you might get an empty output. So that's fine because you have no images. You are starting. So before you are able to even write the command Docker in your CLI, you are supposed to download Docker from Chrome. So go to Chrome and type Docker and install Docker. So if you are able to see that the Docker desktop has to be up and running. So you download Docker. I'm sharing my code slide, so I don't think you're able to see that. No problem. You should first go to Chrome and you should download Docker. Once you have installed Docker properly, Docker would be running. Once Docker is running, only then the command Docker would be recognized. So we have Docker images and we have Docker containers. So what we'll do is we'll try to create a Docker image, a new Docker image for this application. What I'll write is I'll write Docker build -t, and what should I name it? I have to give this a unique name. So since I'm doing this as a demonstration, I'll do Docker demo. Okay, that would be good. Docker demo image. Okay, Docker demo image and followed by a dot. When I do this, what happens is the Docker file would be run through and I would have an image generated by the name Docker demo image. So let me run this. Okay, so what does it say? Okay, let's try minus minus. There seems to be a problem with -t alone. Okay, 1 second. Let me see what is happening here. We have Docker build. Okay, 1 second. Let me clear this. This was Docker build -t. I have a Docker demo. Let me change the name to Docker image. Maybe there's a naming issue here. Docker image. Okay, the command looks good. Docker. Oh, okay. I get the problem. I'm writing build. It's build, build. It's build. Sorry about that. So Docker build -t, Docker demo. I'll put the demo back. Docker demo image. Okay, so you see that step 1 by 7, 2 by 7, 3 by 7, 4 by 7, and there are 7 steps. What's the first step when creating a Docker image? Loading the first line from the Docker file. Second step is loading the second line. So it's creating a workspace and then copying the package.json and then running npm install and then exposing port 8080 and then writing the command npm start. So you see there are all the 7 steps completed and we have successfully built an image. So this is the image ID 7F5 ending with 9D. So if I write Docker images, you see that we have this image ID here created 37 seconds ago and the name being Docker demo image, the same name that we kept. Doc demo or image. Okay, so we have a new name here. Okay, so now we have this image ready. So now let's make a container out of this image. So what I'll do is I'll write docker run. Docker run is the command used for running the containers, and I'll map it to a port. -p label is used for mapping it to a port. Uh, I know that the output is on port number 8080 or 8080 for the container, but what should I map it to on my device? I'll map it to 5000, port number 5000 on my device. And what was the name of the image? It was doc demo, then R, then image. I messed up with the name. Okay, so when I do this, the Docker should be running. Okay, there's an error. What is the error? It says that the port is already allocated. So port number 5000 is already being used by some other process. So I cannot. So I should change my port. I'll access 4000. No problem in accessing 4000. Okay, so we have port number 4000. So I'll go to the web. I'll write localhost :4000. and I have the application running on my localhost 4000. In turn, if I try to access localhost 8080, this would not render any result. There's no result. Why is there no result? Because if you look at the bigger picture, okay, the application is running. Maybe because I have not shared, okay, I'll share my screen in a second and I'll let you people see that. Okay, I think you're able to see that, no problem. So that was the output, and that was how I was able to run the application. So if you look at the bigger picture here, what is happening is that port number 8080 is a port on which you have the output in my device, but running on a Docker daemon. So in my device, I have the Docker daemon running, which is hosting the container. The container is exposed to port number 8080, which I am mapping to my port 5000. So my device ports are different. My container ports are different. So I'm trying to map my container port to my device port. So I write the command as docker run -p device port colon container port, name of the image. So on port number 8080 for the container, I was able to map it to port 4000 of my device. So that is how I was able to run a container. So we have run a container. So now what we'll do is I've exited to the terminal, but if I move to the window, if I move to the localhost 4000, I still see the container is running continuously. Why is it so? Let me write docker ps and see the containers running. You see the Docker daemon image, and then you have the container ID, wherein we have the container image running. It's still running. It was up 2 minutes earlier, and it's still running. So how do we stop it? Okay, well, I write docker kill space. I copy this and I paste this here, and I've killed it. When I go to the localhost 4000 now, they should not be able to, it should not be able to serve me, and it is not able to serve me because I've killed the process, I've killed the container. Now when I enter docker ps, the command that is used for checking all the running containers in our computer, I have only 2 containers running. Earlier I had 3, now I have 2 because I've killed a container. So we were able to create a container image. Now the container image remains irrespective of whether we run the process, or we don't. The container image remains there. We can call up the image and spin it into a container whenever we want, and whenever we want to spin it into a container. So that is it. That was how we were able to create a container. Now we'll move a step further. We'll first see is the image still there. It will 100% be there. So we have Docker images, and the latest one always on the top, created 5 minutes ago. There's the image still. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll clear my screen. So we have created a Docker image using a Docker file. Okay, let me close this. Okay, let me bring the files back. So we are able to create a Docker file and spin containers based on the Docker file, and that is how we created a container. In addition to this, you can create a small file called docker ignore. Now, whenever you have all of this, you see that you have git ignore file and you have licenses and you have readme maybe. Yeah, we have a readme here as well. You do not want to have all of these things in your application. So they are of no use when running on a container, and they occupy space needlessly. So what we can do is we can create a file called .docker ignore. So again, we have a Docker symbol assigned to this file, but with a different color. Now it's gray. In the .docker ignore, what we can write is, see, the node modules are useless. So I can write node modules, and then I have the git file, which is the git ignore file, which is useless from the point of running my application. So I can write .git ignore and readme.md, readme.md, and then okay, node modules, readme.md, and node modules as well. These four files are not pretty useful when it comes to containerizing your applications and running it. So I'll save it. Now what happens is when I try to copy my code, these four files are excluded. My code works seamlessly, but we do not need this file. These are housekeeping files. Why would we need them in a container which is serving on production level? This is for references. So we'll try to ignore this and try to minimize the size of our image. If you go back and if you see the size of the Docker image, it's pretty huge. Let me expand this so that you're able to see the size. Okay, these random images which I have, it's properly ordered. So this image called Python. So basically the Python image, which is the image which is made by Python community for including Python in my code. It's 155 MB. It's pretty small. The node image is pretty small as well. But an application which I tried to create earlier, the container image resulted in being 1.45 GB. So container images. So if I scroll back up, the size of our current image, see, we have these Docker image and the size is 195 MB. It's pretty small right now. So there's no issue with that, but still we'll try to make it as optimized as possible by ignoring those files. So I'll clear all of this out. So I'll clear my screen. Okay, now next we have this Docker image. Now what we'll do is we'll try to push this image onto a container registry so that we can actually run a container in real time. So what we'll do is we'll try to access Azure through the command line. So before doing this, make sure that you have you go to Chrome and then you have Azure CLI, and I'll show you as well, and Docker desktop. Okay, Azure CLI. You should be able to, before doing everything, install the Azure CLI and install Docker desktop on Wind or whatever your OS is specific to that. Be able to make sure that you are able to install both of them. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll log in into Azure. So AZ login, one second. AZ login is the command used for login into Azure portal. So we have AZ login. It will redirect me to my page. Okay, I'll sign in. I'll close this. Anyways, it would redirect me back. Okay, we have logged in. So it has all my subscription details now. Now what I'll do is I'll create a resource group, a new resource group, and we'll start fresh. So what I'll do is I'll write AZ, the default, like for Python, we have Python as the default command directory. If we have Docker for Docker, we have AZ for Azure. So Azure group space create followed by a label called name, and we have to give the name of the resource group. So the name of the resource group would be, before giving the name of the resource group, I would like to tell that we are trying to create a container registry. Okay, so we'll create this resource group for AKS, ACI, as well as our registry. So I'll name this resource group as my demo. Let me write it as well. My demo. My demo RG. So my demo resource group. Space location for the resource group. Location label. I'll give it as East US. No problem. This is a small application not going into production, so wouldn't matter. Let it create. So it's successful. We have created a resource group. Now we have to create a container registry. So AZ ACR. ACR stands for Azure Container Registry. So we are trying to create a container registry wherein we are able to put our container images. So AZ Azure Container Registry, and then we'll create and the resource hyphen the resource group is as as done earlier, my demo rg. I have a typo here. It's my demo rg, my demo resource group, and then the name of the container registry. It would be this has to be unique, and then this has to be pretty meaningful as well. You rename, you mess up with this, and then we mess up with the entire application. So I'll do this as my demo registry, my demo registry, and we'll have to choose an SKU plan. So I'll choose SKU as basic. So this is basically a plan that you have to choose. It's a basic plan, so this is not going to development, so we do not need. Let's see if the name is available for us to be able to. Okay, my demo registry is already in use. We have to change it. So my demo registry 1 2 maybe. Can it have numbers? I'm not sure. Okay, my demo registry 1 2. Let me note down that as well. My demo registry 1 2. Okay, so we have a registry created. Now we will tag our container. So we'll go back to Docker commands and we'll write Docker tag, and our container was doc demo r img, I suppose. Okay, well, let's be clear. I'll write Docker images and then check it out. I do not want to mess up. You make one mistake here and then the entire thing is cluttered in. You won't even realize. So doc demo image. Okay, let me note down that as well. I would advise you people to also keep noting down these things while you make your application, not now. Leave the headache to me right now. Doc demo r image. Okay, so I do not want to mess up things here. So what I'll do is I'll tag. So I'll write Docker tag doc demo, then r, then image. This was the name of my image. Okay, this was my image, and what was my container registry? It was my demo registry, my demo registry 1 2 dot is your container registry cr dot io slash, again the name of the resource group, doc again the name of the container image, I'm sorry, doc demo image, and then we have to give it a tag. So I'll give it as version 1. So doc demo image, name of the image, my demo registry 12, the name of the registry, and then we are trying to tag the image. The tag is successful. Now we'll try to push the image to Azure. So before I do that, let me move to my Azure portal and show you. Okay, portal.azure.com. I'll move to I'll show you that there are no container registries as of now. So I have container registries, and I have created a container registry, my demo registry 12. So because it was successful, now on this registry, if I go to accessing containers, I see activity log. Okay, and we have only created and updated a container registry. There is nothing such. We have not pushed a container image yet. So now what I'll do is I'll try to push it, Docker push, then the name of, okay, I'll modify why to write it again. So just instead of tagging and writing the Docker image, I'll just write Docker push, push. Okay, so I should be able to push it. Authentication required. It requires this is very peculiar about the security. So Azure ACR login minus name, and then the container registry is my demo re registry 1 2. this is logged in, so I should now be able to push it. Yeah, it's going. The security is insane here, so you are required to log in for even pushing a container image. So this happens, so we are trying to push, and the entire content of the Docker file is converted into an image, and the image is pushed onto the container registry. Okay, so this should be done. All the instances are pushed. You might be wondering, why do we have so many pushes? So basically, this is all internal management. You had an image corresponding to Node. You have an image corresponding to your application, and Node may have many more dependencies. So it is all of that. You do not have to worry or panic about this. So it's pushed. Let's move to Azure and check. You have a demo registry. Okay. Go to the repositories, and we have the Docker demo image, which is having its version 1. So we have the repository successfully uploaded the Docker demo image. You could see the image uploaded onto the repository. So we are successful here. So if you want to verify it from your command line, you could write az acr repository and list minus minus name dash dash name. It's a label or a flag. My demo registry 12, spelling's correct, and we'll see the output table. Let it fetch. It should be displaying us Docker demo image. There's a result. So we have successfully pushed our image. So what we'll do now is we'll move back here. Okay, so we have pushed. Now we'll step out of Docker, and Docker is basically a technology that is used to create containers. So we created a Docker image, we created a container image using Docker. So what we'll do now is we'll move to Azure container instances now. It's something similar to Docker. So ignore all those containers. I'll create a new one here. So I'll access the same resource group which I created. What did I name it? I named it Docker demo. Okay, yeah. This my demo resource group. I named it my demo, and then the name of the container. I'll keep it instead of my container. Let our container. I may have my containers as well in my login. So the image source I'll choose as Azure Container Registry, and then I'll select a registry, my demo registry 12. Okay, so it requires admin access. Okay, 1 second. I'll keep that as it is, and I'll open a different window logging into. Uh, for logging into Azure. 1 second. Okay, yeah. I'll have to give 1 second. I'll have to give the admin access. Okay, let me get my hands on. Okay. Let me get the recollect the command that we're supposed to write for giving access. 1 second. Just hold on while I get back. Hold on for a minute. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Azure ACR and then followed by update -n update, then -n. Don't worry, I'll share all of this. Don't have to worry. The thing is, I also have to refer Microsoft Docs, the Microsoft documentation to be able to get to all of this. -n, then name of the registry, which is my demo registry 12, followed by --admin enabled true. Okay, let me put this. Okay, let's run this. This should update the admin rights. I've already said the security is quite amazing here. So I think this should require me to load this again. Then we can have access. Okay. So we'll use the demo resource group that we have here. And then the name of the container would be our container. And then Azure container images, my demo registry 12. See, there is no error this time. The Docker demo image YV1, and then we move next to networking. We have to create it public, and we'll name it our container. Remember that in networking, you have to give a networking type as public and enable port number 8080 as a TCP connection, because that is what we are that is how we are trying to access it. And then in advanced we have nothing, tags we have nothing. Let's review and create. So what we are doing now is we have created a container image from on our local application, and we have pushed the image onto a container registry, the Azure container registry. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to create earlier we created a container using Docker, which we ran on a local machine. But Azure is providing us Azure container services which are present in the cloud. So we are able to run containers in the cloud and everyone could access it. What's the point of running it on your local machine? It's pretty helpful if you and your friend working on a project, but you have a huge team, then having your containers on cloud is required. So we have Azure container registry wherein we pushed our container image, and then from here we are trying to run the container using Azure container instances. So I first created a registry and then I moved to Azure container instances, and I'm now creating a container. So what I'll do is I'll copy this, the FQDN, and then I'll paste this. I'll press enter, and then I should get nothing, because I do not have the port map here. But if I enter port number 8080, here we have the application. I would like all of you to try this. Type, okay, I'll try to put this in the chat box. 1 second, so that all of you can just try visiting this. Just try, if you have the chat box here. Okay, so I have posted a link into the chat, hopefully, and you should be able to click on the link and access it. Uh, is the link accessible? If someone could acknowledge. You can tell in the chat as well. It should be fine. Okay, so you can try accessing it. You can try the link, and you can also visit the application because it's hosted on a container and it's running. So we have our application running in the container, to which you have the URL, and you could try that in your mobiles or on your laptops and see the application and try using it yourself. Okay, so I hope that you are able to access it. The move to the application that we created using the link that I've sent into the chat, and try working out with it. So as long as I keep the container running, you'll have access to the link. You have access to the link. So here you see I have these the container running, and the FQDN, it's actually a domain name server, DNS, what we call the DNS address. So FQDN is used for accessing domain names, and you should be able to access it doing similarly on your computer. So you don't forget to append 8080, the port number, when you do it. No problem. I'll share it. Can copy this and paste the link here. Okay, so we have the container running. We have the container running, and I hope that everyone are able to access it. Okay, no problem. You can copy the link and paste it into your browser. Okay, now next, let's move back to our presentation for a while, and then we'll go with the Kubernetes. What is Kubernetes, and let's see how that happens. So let me share my presentation. Yeah, I hope my presentation is visible. Okay, so that was a demo, and you have to do all of this again, no problem. So that was the demo with the containers, and now what we'll be doing, you have all the containers, and I think you have this analogy pretty clear right now: container image, container registries, Docker images, and all of that. So now let's move along. You have done all of this: Docker files, Azure container instances, and Azure container registries done and covered. And how efficient can containers be? Well, imagine you have this architecture where you have a huge dependent application, which is which can be logically split into various containers, but there is a lot of dependency between them. So how does this happen with you? How do you fix this dependency, and how to work around with it? Well, if you have so many containers, working with them would be a big issue. So if you have like 1,000 containers, that would be a problem. So going back to the analogy of the Docker and the docs and the seaport that we have used, we have covered everything. We have covered the cargo ships, the containers, the tickets that are required to put the tools. But we have left one thing which is very significant in a seaport. That is the manager. What manages the containers in a seaport? It is the container manager, or the cranes, those are present. So I would like to introduce to you Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is a container manager. So if you have your application divided into various containers, because we are all talking about microservice architecture here, the application can be divided into small microservices. So each service can be put into a container, and all the containers can be running parallelly. So we need someone who can manage all of that, because logically everything is belonging to the same application. So here we have Kubernetes. So Kubernetes does something called as orchestration, or managing in naive terms. So orchestration is the task of automating, managing, and interacting with a large number of containers. Orchestration tools and technologies automate the deployment, managing, scaling, networking of containerized applications. So Kubernetes orchestrate containers. So now Kubernetes, referred to as K8s. The developers usually call it K8s because if you count the spaces, the number of characters between K and S are 8. So they say K8s. So Kubernetes is a rapidly evolving container orchestration technique. It was made by Joe Beda and Brendan Burns and acquired by and gained interest from Google in mid 2014. That is when it gained interest. Like Docker, container is also a technology platform. Like GitHub is, like NPM is, like Docker is. The same way Kubernetes is. So now, why Docker and Kubernetes have I chosen for this session? I could have chosen any other orchestration technique or any other way of putting out containers. I could have directly started with Azure container instances. I use Docker and Kubernetes because they are, as you could see in the statistics, the most widely used containerization and orchestration managing techniques in the industry by far to anything. Red Hat, KROS, everything is far behind. So now Kate's now Kubernetes terminologies. Now we have something called as pods and nodes. Kubernetes uses pods to run an instance of an application. So one pod is containing one container. So a pod is having a container in it. So containers are mapped one-on-one with pods, and nodes are a collection of pods. So basically you have a container in a pods and a group of containers into a node. So that is a pod and that is a node. So you have node pools. Now various number of nodes can be grouped together into a node pool. This is pretty helpful when you have when you are dealing with a wide variety of containers deployed and you have to manage them efficiently. Example, you have an application like Snapchat wherein you have login, sign up, and everything related to login and sign up. All those containers spinning. Login can be in a different container. The sign up module can be in a different container. They can be together in one node in two different pods, but in the same node. So everything regarding login and sign up could be in a single node pool. So if you have to manage something and do something with the login and sign up interface, you can access a node pool entirely. And then you have a cluster. All the node pools are together in a cluster. So it's like a web. You have node pools, within them you have nodes, and within them you have pods. And the fundament, okay, this is, ignore that slide, I'm sorry. That is not related, that was from a previous lecture. So what does the cluster look like? This is the cluster. You manage the right side, Azure takes care of the left side. Look at the right side, you have nodes, and in the nodes you have pods. Along with the pods, you have something called as a container runtime and containers. Containers are pods basically, and you have a kubeproxy in the kubelet. So these are the APIs that communicate with the server and allow you to create Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is a service. It has to have some logic in managing the containers, which is a written code which you access via an API. So Kubernetes is available on Azure Cloud, so you don't have to download anything onto your local desktop. So kubelet is the application programming interface or the API that you can use to access containers. So used to access Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is an orchestration technology. So now let's move into putting our application onto Kubernetes and orchestrating the container that we just created using Kubernetes. So let me share back my demonstration window. Okay, I hope that it is visible now. Okay, I'll show the demo. I'll show my window. Okay, cool. Good. Thank you, Ananya. Okay, so this is the application running on this is the application basically running on our container, which is hosted using Azure. So what we'll do is we'll try to create a Kubernetes service. So we'll go to home and we'll type Kubernetes services, and we have a Kubernetes service here. So we'll try to create a new one. Ignore the previous one. So we'll add a Kubernetes cluster. So let's add a cluster and resource group. I'll try to use the same resource group, my demo, because when I delete it, I want the entire thing to go without incurring any cost. So I want to delete all of this together. And cluster name, I named it R container, so I'll name this R cluster. And I'll have 3 nodes. So I'll have 3 nodes with 1 pod each. So you have 3 pods in 3 pods are in 3 nodes which are on a cluster, and we have no node pool right now. So this is visible from the node count field here. So node size is standard. You can change the size if you want. So basically this is orchestrated on a virtual machine. As I've already said, things are usually done on a VM, but containers are different. So Kubernetes is also orchestrated on a VM, but remember that VMs are only for orchestrating Kubernetes. It doesn't mean that our application is hosted on a VM. It's a container, okay? So let's go next. And next, in authentication, remember that you have to use system assigned managed identity. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay. So make sure that you have to use system assigned identity, otherwise this would give you an error. So these settings are preliminary and these are very fundamental to running this. So next, let's move to networking. And there's nothing here. Let's move to integrations. And you have an integration to do. Okay, let's move to integrations. Okay, so you need to run a container image onto, you're orchestrating a container onto this. So container image on runtime becomes a container. So you need a container image. So my demo registry 1.2 will select, and yeah, so that is it. We have selected the container registry where our container is, and then we'll review and create. Let's create it. So we are creating it. By this time, let me introduce you to the Cloud Shell. So what Azure did is accessing services was possible from two methods. You either run through the Azure portal and click the buttons and do it, or either you use the Azure CLI, like I've done on VS Code. You are able to see that. I was able to write AZ and see all my write all the commands. Like I was able to create a resource group from here. I was able to create a uh, I'm highlighting that this is a command using I log my container registry using Azure CLI. So what happened is developers wanted to access the CLI but wanted to remain on the portal in the first place. So this then came up the idea of Cloud Shell. So basically this is a shell running on the cloud. Okay, so these are an application. So the Cloud Shell is started. So you can do things here. For that, you'll have to refer the Azure CLI docs. So there are quite a number of things that you can do with the Azure CLI. So there are a lot of commands. You could come back and refer all the commands, like you can create. You actually do not have to go to the Azure portal if you know how to use the CLI. That is how I did with creating the resource group and the registry and pushing the container and everything. All of that can be done from the portal as well. So you can come here and click buttons and do this, but I preferred because it was fast. Now Kubernetes cluster takes about 5 minutes to deploy because our application was not big as well. It was not big enough. So let it deploy. So in the meanwhile, I'll introduce you people to how we are going to be creating our cluster. So let me close all these files and let me create a new file. Remember that this file is not related to the container. I'm just writing it because I need an editor. I'll be writing this as kubernetes.yaml. So YAML is a setup file. Like we have .json files used for setups. Okay, so we'll be writing I guess we are short on time, so I had the idea of actually trying to write this file with you people. So we are short, no problem. Once the container Kubernetes cluster is deployed, we are good to go. So let me paste the entire code here instead of writing it with you people because we are short on time. I'll run you through, no problem. Okay. So I'll go back here. I thought of writing it down, but what I'll do now is okay, if it's first created, then I can try to do things. Okay, no problem. Deployment takes time. We are running short on time. So thankfully, I already deployed an application. So if I write kubectl get nodes. So let me see how many nodes do I have. Okay, we have these many nodes already. Now let me get the pods and see how many pods we have. Kubectl get pods, and we have a pod running. So now let's see what services do we have. I'll tell you about services in 2 minutes. Kubectl get services, and then this gives me a name called Kubernetes and a cluster IP and a load balancer with an external IP. So if I copy this external IP, if I come here and if I paste my external IP, I again come back here. So remember that this was not because my container is running. This is because my Kubernetes cluster is up and running. So I'll paste this. I'll show you how I did this. It will take 2 minutes of time, but I would also like to paste this here with you in the meeting. Uh, I'll have this IP address. Try visiting it. This is an IP address. If you see 52.154. It's an IP address. It's not a link. So basically, it's an IP address of the container running in the Kubernetes cluster. So how did I do this? I'll show you through the Cloud Shell. So I created a file called vi my cluster EML. It's a set of file that I was trying to show you on VS Code, but I'll just show it to you here. So when you see the thing was running, okay, hi. It's a Linux interface. So hi. So you see this is a kind of deployment. So we have our AKS cluster, and you have a node selector which is selecting Linux, and we have a web app container. So this is the name I gave to the container uh, because that is not related to this. So it had other resource groups and other names, and I used an image called AKS app. So my container registry / AKS app, the same name that we use there, and then the requests, the CPU limits and all. I've tried checking it out. And port is very important. I have selected the container port as 8080, and then importantly I have the label name, which is my name of the app, as AKS cluster. Now if you move down, I have a load balancer. So how Azure works basically is that it has a load balancer. So load balancer is what actually takes care or allows you access to the service, the container. So you have to have another kind of service. The previous kind was deployment, but if you note here, this kind is a service, and then you have the load balancer. So this is a load balancer with the target port being 8080 and the external port being 80. So it allows access to the world on port number 80, but in turn accesses the container from port 8080. And then you have the name as app. Okay, so this is it. Yeah, this is how much the code is. That repetition, I don't know why it is. Yeah, so this is how you write a .yaml file. This is the content. So the challenge on launching a cluster is writing this file. I had a hard time figuring out how to work this file out, because you have to read the documentation available on Kubernetes. So this cluster is up and running, so it's able to properly give you the results. So Kubernetes has this documentation wherein you first have to identify what service you are trying to run, and once you identify what service you are running, then you have to check out how to write as a setup file for it and then orchestrate it, because without a setup file, cluster won't be able to run. So I had to figure out that I first need a deployment and I need a service, and what my deployment should be like, what parameters and fields do I need. And here you'll find all the instructions that you need to write the file, and then in that way you'll be able to run the cluster and run any application of your choice you want. So writing the Docker file and the YAML file for the cluster takes practice, and in one shot, I think it would not be possible for you to get it in the first go. But if you practice, as you have seen that I had a lot of containers images in my machine, because I've tried creating a lot of them in order to get well versed with it. So try to referring the documentation, and you can contact us if you have a problem. Now, before I finish this, I hope that you're able to access it via the IP address on the cluster as well, and you're able to follow how we are able to orchestrate it on a cluster, on a Kubernetes cluster. So one last thing before I finish my session, let me share my presentation back. Okay, so there we go. We are done with the demonstration. What further can you do? Now we have created one container on a single node and a single pod that we have tried to orchestrate. What you can do is you can break down your application into different files. Example, backend server file is different, the front end file is different, both of them on different containers on the same node in the same cluster, and then one of them goes down, you have a different node ready, and then the entire code base can be spun on a different container as a whole. Example, you have a problem with the machine or the server, suddenly the Kubernetes cluster can spin up a new container and have the thing running. So even if your entire data center blows up, if you have a proper Kubernetes cluster running up, it can shift your entire database and entire applications that were running on the data center onto a different data center quickly, provided you have a Kubernetes cluster set up with nodes on it. That is how convenient this is. So there are a lot of things that you can do with it. You can scale it, you can put it on networks, you can add more security, you can add more load balancers, numerous things. I just scratched the surface. I didn't even get close to diving into it. So this was just to give you a basic idea of how Kubernetes and clusters are used. Certainly with this knowledge, you can move ahead and try exploring. It will be very easy for you. So we have learned Docker, a Docker file, Azure registries, container instances, AKS and EML file for clusters, and how to access the Azure Cloud Shell. So these were some of the commands. I would share the PPT, the recording, and my blogs, which have all of the commands and the codes and everything covered. Do not have to worry. And the common and the important commands that we use. And before I sign off, I have a challenge for all of you. So I have an application which made for all of you, very simple hello world kind of application on github.com/my name/docker-web app. You are required to clone this or fork this repository, write a Docker file for it, and run a container for this. And whenever you are able to run the container successfully, share with me or with Rida or Ananya the link of the application, the FQDN address of your container running in a LinkedIn post. You can tag me in the post, and if you're able to do so, then you'll get an amazing exclusive Girls Code badge to shine among all the other attendees or all the other members that we have for this organization. So the link to my repository, I'll put in the chat box as well. And do not modify the application. Do not go to Stack Overflow and try to put all the fixes and modify my server app. Do not do that. Write a Docker file for my server and try to spin it on a container and share with us the FQDN of the container. The application is ready and on my GitHub repository. Try accessing it, fork it, and write a Docker file for it. And I have you covered with my blogs. I've written 2 blogs on getting started with Docker and Azure container instances. It's a 10-minute blog containing everything that we have done today, and another blog with Kubernetes. Interestingly, you'll find more details of how to write a .yaml file for launching a Kubernetes cluster. So this was with the session. Show your love on social media. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Endorse me on LinkedIn if you have liked the session. Connect on Twitter and follow Girls Code as well. So this was my part. I would like to appreciate Rida and Ananya for taking this initiative and starting Girls Code in the first place and having all these amazing sessions. And that is with me. I hope you have followed and learned something new and valuable. Uh, I would hand it over back to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sohaib. It was an amazing session, as I knew it would be. And I'm sure that all of us will be applying whatever you've said. And I hope that all the attendees are excited about the challenge and the badge for whoever will be winning it. And like I've said, all the resources will be available. Everything that Sohaib mentioned will be provided to you. So don't worry about that. And the video also will be shared for you for future reference. So thank you so much for that. And thank you once again, Sohaib, for taking time out and gracing your presence and helping us out so much. Thank you.
My pleasure, no problem. So I would like to ask the attendees present if they have any questions, they would feel free to put it on the chat or even unmute themselves and ask. Yeah, no problem. Any questions regarding any of the doubts, maybe smallest of the doubts, no problem. It's a fairly new topic. I'm here answering any of your queries. If you have, you may put it on the chat, no problem.
Maybe if they tried by themselves, they might reach like roadblocks or something. So then they might have questions. Because for now, I don't see any
Yeah,
questions.
surely. I think they'll be having some roadblocks. However, if they try following my blogs, all of you who are listening, if you try following my blogs, I've covered all chances of errors that you could land into and probably try following it. Further, if you have a huge roadblock, I'm on LinkedIn. You can text me. I'll help you out. No problem.
Okay, so if you have any issues later on, Sohaib is available, so you can ping him anytime if you face an issue. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and see you later. Bye, guys. I'm gonna end the session now. So bye.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.